standing with you before you after lunch and before tea. So while some of you might want to sleep and maybe looking eagerly for tea, we'll try and make this short. Especially because the topic is very objective. Miscellaneous remittances from India, as involves current account regulations, the LRS scheme, etc. And the topic is very objective that way. But I would encourage all of you, based on your practical experience dealing with your clients and with the authorized dealers, with bankers, if you have any particular experience to share, please raise your hand so that everybody else gets the benefit. I may not have the benefit because, as Rajesh Bhai said, I have been in the US for 3 years, so little bit of out of touch in terms of the practicalities, what is happening on the ground. But with that few words, let's start. So the agenda is overview of the current and capital account transactions. I know you must have heard this since yesterday, so I'll not spend a lot of time. What is capital account? What is current account? Use of international credit cards, debit cards, miscellaneous remittances from India, surrender of foreign exchange, how much foreign exchange can be kept by a person resident in India, the LRS scheme, which has been a significant development in India's endeavor to convert rupee from current to capital account, foreign currency accounts by person residents in India, particularly the RFC and RFCD account, we'll discuss on that, and then lastly remittance of assets. As I said, please feel free to intervene, give your comments, and try and make this interactive. Just to give a quick overview, as you know, FEMA divides transactions into capital account and current account transactions. Capital account transactions are prohibited unless specifically permitted, because rupee in India today is not convertible on capital account yet. So that's the difference between capital and current account, whereas current account transactions are permitted unless they are specifically permitted or prohibited, because the rupee is convertible on current account as far as current account transactions is concerned. So just to give a very simple example, if you buy an asset from abroad, it may be part of your fixed asset like a machinery, etc. But because you don't have any asset or liability abroad, it would still be a current account transaction for you. So like buying a machinery, etc. But if on the other hand you buy a machinery on loan from someone abroad, or say buy goods on loan abroad, it may be a trading asset for you, the goods, etc. But because you have created a payable to someone outside India, it becomes a capital account transaction. So that's a very simple distinction between what is capital account and what is current account. If you go to the permissible capital account transactions and how it is defined, capital account transaction under section 2E means a transaction which alters the assets or liabilities, including contingent liabilities of a person resident in India or liabilities or assets of in India for person resident outside India. And how is current account transaction defined? Means a transaction which is other than a capital account transaction. So very simply, all transactions which do not fall within the test we laid down of assets and liabilities in India of a non-resident and outside India of a resident, they fall under current account transactions. Except where the current account transaction rules defines certain 4 types of transactions to also form part of current account transaction. Now if you see, most of them are really clarificatory in nature. Payments due as interest on loans. It is supposed to be a current account transaction. So in my view, it is more of a clarificatory in nature. Remittances for living expenses of parents. Again, this would not create any asset or liability for me outside India. Expenses in connection with foreign travel, etc. These are more clarificatory. The only important point to note is short-term banking and credit facilities in the course of business. So if you have, as an Indian company, if someone has a short-term loan from abroad, that would be considered as a current account transaction rather than a capital account. The only difficulty is the law does not define what is a short-term credit. So would 6 months under the ECB regulations be short-term? Would 3 months be short-term, etc.? And what do you mean by credit facilities? Would banking facilities can be understood, but credit facilities, if you have buyer's credit or supplier's credit, the ECB regulations provides for that. But other than what is provided in the ECB regulations, would that also fall under current account transaction? To my mind, at least for me, I am not clear if that is defined in law. but if someone has any particular experience, maybe he can share. So that's on the broad overview. Capital account transactions are again divided into Schedule 1 and 2 as per the capital account transaction regulations. Schedule 1 deals with transactions of a person resident in India, and we will only discuss that because we are today discussing remittance facilities for residents. And Schedule 2 is a transaction of persons who are non-residents. Except that the following transactions are specifically permitted. So business of chit fund, nidhi fund, agricultural activity, real estate business, trading in TDR, these are specifically prohibited from being carried out by a person resident in India or outside India. Now why this is important for us is, if you look at the LRS scheme, which we will discuss later on, it allows remittance for all permissible capital account transactions and current account transactions. So what are the permissible capital account transactions? Those would be transactions which are listed in Schedule 1, namely investment in foreign securities, any foreign currency loans in India or abroad, buying immovable property, guarantees, export-import of currency, maintenance of accounts abroad, loans to a non-resident, loans from a non-resident, taking an insurance policy. So today you could use the LRS scheme for buying an insurance policy from a company outside India, or sale purchase of foreign exchange derivatives. But at the same time, as I said earlier, because these 5 transactions are specifically prohibited, you cannot use the LRS scheme for these 5 transactions. Now let's look at current account transactions. As you know, current account transaction rule says any person can sell or buy foreign exchange from an authorized dealer for any current account transaction unless they are regulated. So what are the regulated transactions? The regulated transactions as per the FEMA current account rules are divided into 3 parts. Part 1, where transactions are completely prohibited. Part 2 is where transactions require central government approval. And Part 3 is transactions which require RBI approval. Now just for your information, I have listed them down without really having much to discuss on Schedule 1 and 2. But importantly, Schedule 3, if you look at the items in Schedule 3, it lists down, it provides for various monetary limits on certain transactions. So for example, if you are going on a private visit to a particular country, then you cannot draw more than $10,000 in a financial year. It's not per trip, it's per financial year. Similarly, gift remittance and donations cannot be made exceeding $5,000. Persons going abroad on employment cannot take foreign currency more than $1 lakh per year. Similarly, for immigration, you cannot take more than 1 lakh. But what is to be noted is that there is no documentary evidence required for some of these transactions. Like going for employment or going for immigration, you can freely remit up to $1 lakh without any documentary evidence provided to the AD, just on the basis of a self-declaration. Also, certain transactions like maintenance of close relatives abroad. So for foreign expats who come to India for employment, they can remit their entire net salary after payment of taxes for maintenance of close relatives abroad, and in other cases you can remit only $1 lakh. Now you notice a slight distinction between A and B. In the case of a foreign citizen, he need not be an employee of a foreign company. So he can be just a freelancer who comes to India on employment, and on that basis he can remit up to his net salary. But if it is an Indian citizen, then he has to be an employee of a foreign company, and then he can come to India on deputation, secondment to the JV or wholly owned subsidiary. So that's one distinction.
In the previous slide you mentioned that 1 lakh. So some businessman going abroad on the thinking that he is going to be employed by, or some appointment later is there, and he carries $1 lakh, or he remits the $1 lakh, not under LRS but under this scheme.
And LRS he cannot do this.
Yeah.
So
$100,000 he just remit it from here to outside, and then he can use this amount for any purpose over there, or what is the restrictions? Or
no, so if a person is going abroad on employment, then he's changing his employment status, then he can take $1 lakh. The current account rules do not say that that has to be used only in connection with his employment, etc. He could use it for his personal purpose. For example, he's transiting his house abroad. For whatever purpose, he can still use that $1 lakh.
So it means that LRS under which the house buying property is restricted, but he can use this $1 lakh.
According to me, he can, because there is no restriction under this. As long as he's going on employment abroad, he can use the $1 lakh.
So in this case, how this amount will be remitted? Because here he is holding the only resident union account, the account, and this amount is to be remitted. Under which account he can remit it?
As an Indian resident, obviously he cannot open an account abroad. I am not sure. Maybe if he goes abroad
Can
and
you open account under LRS and then later on transfer this money?
Once he becomes a non-resident, the question of LRS doesn't arise.
Before becoming, that he cannot use. If he has
he
opened-
cannot do, correct. So once he becomes a non-resident, goes on employment, then he can open an account abroad over there. But I think the question is, in the meantime, what happens? So when he goes on employment, he's still a resident. He's not yet a non-resident. So when he's going, suppose when he's still in India, he's going abroad. There's a practical difficulty on the time gap. He becomes an employment when he goes, say the day he's going abroad on employment. So if he's drawing foreign currency before that, I'm not sure how he would be able to deposit the money in a foreign account. That's a good question.
Secondly,
I don't know anybody has any
secondly,
thoughts.
what will be the time limit? Suppose he goes today, yeah, after 1 month, now he can wait.
According to me, there's no restriction. So as long as he's taking the money for employment, I think he can still remit. He should prove that it is for the purpose of his employment. I think a reasonable time limit should be set. So for example, if he remits after 6 months, then he cannot say that he's taking it for employment. If it is within a few days, you could still argue that it is for the purpose of employment. But I think the practical difficulty on bank account might be there. Yes.
Once you become NRI, you can take it $1 million. Person resident outside India, you can take it $1 million. How we require
Yes, permitted.
Once you become NRI, you can take it $1 million.
From the NRO account, you can remit up to $1 million. That is under the limit of the assets. That's the difference. Similarly, there is a restriction on payment for consultancy fees for a project, up to $1 million for $10 million for infra projects and $1 million for other consultancy projects. Now, I am not sure why this restriction is there, because today royalties are free. You can remit irrespective of whatever you want, other than the fact that now there's been some discussion in the government that Maruti and other companies are stripping profits from their Indian arm by taking a lot of royalty. So there's some discussion of bringing back the regulation. But other than that, there is complete freedom. So I don't understand why this consultancy service restriction is still there as part of law. Again, what is meant by consultancy service? Can we take the income tax definition of professional technical consultancy and say that technical and professional services are allowed, only consultancy is restricted? Again, that's something which is not clear. The other important limit is for pre-incorporation expenses. You can limit up to 5% of the investments brought to India, subject to or $1 lakh, whichever is higher, for pre-incorporation expenses. Sometimes we are seeing clients ask that, what happens for expenses which are incurred after incorporation. So obviously you cannot open a bank account immediately on incorporation of the company. So the foreign company might still have incurred some expenses after incorporation. So as per RBI, informally we understand that that could be a difficult situation. The FIBB might not allow you remittance of post-incorporation expenses, and the RBI will treat it as a deemed loan by the foreign company without actually.
It is not treated as a deemed loan. We have a case going.
Have you got the permission from them?
We have already applied for it.
Because what I understand from RBI, we have seen clients, and when we ask for the RBI, they say we are not going to allow repatriation of this.
See, the idea is people were filing applications to the ECB. ECB says it doesn't come under our purview. So we cannot accept your request. So now it goes to EPD. We have to file it to EPD and they will process.
Right, so that's what the RBI is saying, that it is a deemed loan but will not allow under the ECB rules.
Yeah,
That's what we have been told. It's technically a loan, but doesn't follow the ECB regulations. That's what we are told. And so we have applications which are stuck up where they are not allowed for conversion to equity, nor they are allowing for repatriation.
Actually, you can go and speak with the understand.
But as you said, you've not got permission so far, right?
No, so, but we have already
You applied for them.
what exactly the transaction is, because many a times what happens with the AD's relationship, generally AD is also allowed, but certain cases where time period has elapsed, then the AD will ask you to do it.
Right, but also what is important is that it is not automatic. Some people take a view that it is automatic, it falls in pre-incorporation. It is not pre-incorporation. Pre-incorporation means strictly pre-incorporation, before incorporation. The other topic is use of international credit cards and debit cards. So as you know, today you can apply for an ICC or IDC from a bank in India. As per the current account rules, an ICC can be used for travel abroad in connection with various payments, or for online subscriptions, journals, etc. For meeting expenses while a person is abroad, etc. The only restriction is it is not allowed for prohibited items like lottery tickets, banned items, etc. And for payment in foreign exchange to somebody in Nepal or Bhutan. Limits under Schedule 3 do not apply to international credit cards. So the limits which we discussed earlier, $1 lakh or $10,000, whatever, they don't apply if you are using an international credit card. And what the rule says is that the limit will only be the limit as per the bank which issues the ICC. So in some cases, if you have an Amex Gold card or something, you might have limits which are $50,000 or whatever. So you could still exceed the limits under Schedule 3 by using an international credit card. One question practically which comes sometime is whether you need a 15 CB when you are making payment through ICC. In my experience, I have seen some clients who make remittance by using a credit card without obtaining a 15 CB or a 15 CA, which I think is a dangerous situation, because under law, remittance in foreign exchange includes remittance to ICC. So technically you need a 15 CA, 15 CB even if you are using an ICC for making a payment to someone abroad. And as we know, practically in assessments, what department does is they will ask you for, if you made a foreign payment, where is your 15 CA CB? You say we don't have 15 CB. They will say okay, under 195 you are not allowed. So without going into the merits, they would disallow deduction for the expense. So therefore I think that is important. Yeah, I don't have practical experience. But I think the rules permit payment by other modes.
But then again,
15 CB is an issue.
credit card.
Right.
No one is there to back check.
There's no checklist by the bank to restrict it.
As per PayPal also, PayPal is linked to your account. If you make it through PayPal,
It is similar to the ICC. So I think as we need to advise our clients that even if you are using a PayPal or ICC, you still need to get a 15 CB and give us some more fees.
That's the bottom line.
Sorry?
That's the bottom line.
No, that's not the bottom line. That's actually a violation of law. Going to certain miscellaneous remittances from India. So.
As you said, international credit card. Suppose there's a company or director is using his personal card, personal expenses, and then he's claiming a refund from, he's claiming a claim from the company. So when company is making a payment, company is reimbursing. So I've heard even that what someone's take a view, I'm reimbursing the amount, I'm not making a payment. So you can, so then under 195 you're not, it doesn't do it. It says you're making a payment. And here I'm giving a claim, refund claim. So then still will require 15 CACB, or how will need to go ahead,
So
because
the person is using an ICC abroad.
it's abroad, his personal ICC is abroad, he's just making
Right.
an expenses on behalf of a company, then he's claim it to the
According to
company.
me, yes, because ultimately, indirectly, the payment is made to a non-resident. And if the payments are covered under 195, they are, royalties, technical fees, whatever, as taxable under 195, then I think still 15 CB is required.
So then whom should we, in the 15 C we need to mention the payer and the pay. So we will be addressing the pay either the director or the third party.
No, it would be the ultimate entity, because there are a lot of these case laws which say that if you are a pass-through cost, then it is still taxable because payment is made indirectly to the foreign beneficiary.
So then the TDS has to be between, we need to gross it up and then we need to just pay.
Because obviously the party, he would not deduct from his payment, so you need to gross it up and pay. I don't know, anybody has a different view there.
In ICC, you are making the payment to the local banks.
That's what.
See, international credit cards and international debit cards are issued by the Indian banks, and you are going to make the payment in the Indian rupee to ICICI. So there is no question of applicability of 195.
No, so I think his question is that the director is using his ICC and I am reimbursing him